Good evening, buenas noches. Thank you for joining us tonight. On behalf of Mitchell Kaplan, Miami Book Fair, and all of us at Books and Books, I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's virtual evening with Kevin Kwan to discuss his latest novel, Sex and Vanity, published by Doubleday. We're huge fans of Kevin's work and couldn't be more grateful to him for agreeing to join us this evening. Our moderator is going to give a full introduction of Kevin and go in depth into the new book, but I wanted to mention that Kevin is also the author of a book that most people don't associate him with. I Was Cuba. That's right, I Was Cuba is an original look at Cuban history as seen through the Ramiro Fernandez collection, which is arguably the world's leading archive of Cuban photos and ephemera. So there's a big Miami, Cuba, New York connection. To moderate tonight's conversation, we've tapped the wonderful Stephanie Sayfie Aagaard, who serves as the Collaborative Innovator General at Whitman Family Development and Bal Harbour Shops. A native of Miami, Stephanie covers the social, celebrity, fashion, sports, and charity scene in South Florida, and her Steph Says column every Sunday in the Miami Herald is a monthly contributor. She's also a monthly contributor for Indulge magazine. Books and Books has a bookstore at Bal Harbour Shops since 2005, and together we presented authors in their beautiful center courtyard and have had a fruitful and really fun partnership with their team that includes Cheryl Stevenson and Gottmar Hiron. Together, we've recently launched the Steph Says Book Club at Bal Harbour Shops, where we read together and meet on Instagram every last Tuesday of the month. I'm happy to report that our Bal Harbour Shop store is now gratefully reopened for safe and socially distanced browsing. Throughout tonight's broadcast, we invite you to ask questions by pressing the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll have time for some of these at the end of the conversation. You can find Sex and Vanity and any other book by Kevin Kwan for purchase at Books and Books below by clicking the green button. Every purchase you make helps keep Books and Books up and running. We also have a special fundraising effort mounted right now with signature t-shirts and tote bags available online through August 8th, so check those out on our website. And one more little thing, which is really not little, but let me alert you that Kevin is the subject of this week's podcast, The Literary Life with Mitchell Kaplan, and that episode goes live tomorrow on LitHub Radio, Apple, and Spotify. So let's make this a Kevin Kwan weekend. And now, without further ado, let's get started.
Thank you, Christina. Well, tonight is the night. We have been waiting for this for so long, Kevin. I have to tell you, the Steph Says Book Club members have been sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for Friday night. And what a perfect happening. Got our caffeine ready to go. Grab your mocktail, your cocktail. He's sitting right there, but he really needs no introduction yet. He is the iconic author of Crazy Rich Asians and that amazing trilogy, you know, China Rich Girlfriend, Rich People Problems, which I absolutely loved. And the amazing thing, Crazy Rich Asians was translated into over 30 languages, international bestseller, and of course, the movie adaptation of Crazy Rich Asians, which had every woman of man flocking to the theaters, watching it on TV. It was incredible. But you also were named one of Time Magazine's, I mean, this is amazing, one of the most influential people in the world. And tonight we've got you here on our Steph Says Book Club chat with Books and Books, Bal Harbour Shops, and the Miami Book Fair. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I mean, I wish I could be in Bal Harbour right now. I mean, I miss Florida and I miss Miami so much. You know, Miami has such a special place in my heart, because it's really where I kind of really began my publishing career. This was back in 2004, 2003, 2004. I was about to give up. I was about to like throw in the towel, leave New York and go to law school. Like my mom really wanted me to, because I was like, this is not working out anymore. Like trying to struggle and work a freelance life and be a creative person in New York and pay the rent every month. It was, you know, like any struggle in you know at that time in my 20s. And then I had this idea to do a book about Celia Cruz.
Amazing.
You know,
amazing.
And I met these amazing photographers, Alexis Rodriguez Duarte and Tico Torres, who had this amazing collection of their photographs of Celia, and that started really my publishing career. That was the first book I produced, We came to Miami. We had a huge, huge splashy launch in Miami. Books and Books has always been so good to us, and so it's so good to be here.
That's incredible. Well,
virtually, if not actually.
Exactly. It feels like we're together at the same place.
No,
in
exactly.
Books at Bal Harbour shops. That's incredible.
Totally.
I know Torres, so I love that story. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to come back to Miami and maybe even set one of your books in Bal Harbour shops. You never know.
Hey. I mean, it's the place to shop. So
it is the place to shop.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, all the designer ensembles and everything in this new novel, which is a stunning, amazing, incredible story, Sex and Vanity. I mean, when it came out, people were going nuts, Kevin. Tell us, I mean, you took us away. You wrote this incredible vacation read, which we really all need right now, to go to Capri and take us away. Tell us a little summary about this incredible book.
Yeah, I mean, that was my idea. I was really trying to create the ultimate beach read. And the good thing is you guys can still do that in Florida. You can actually read the book on the beach, hopefully, 10 feet away from someone else with a mask on. But, the rest of us, I think, can't do that. So it's just kind of very bittersweet right now. Never did I thought I'd be launching a book in the middle of a pandemic, But you do what you can. And I'm hoping it really provides an escape, because that's what I wanted to do. I had this idea about 10 years ago, A Room of a View, the movie and the novel by E.M. Forster. It's one of my favorite books in the world. And so I thought, my ultimate fantasy is to take that amazing story of that amazing love triangle and set it in modern times. How do I make it a contemporary modern story with a modern heroine? And so that's what I did. And that's what Sex and Vanity became. It's the story of a girl named Lucy. She is biracial. She has a Chinese mother, and her father is a blue blood Park Avenue prince, basically. So she grows up as a Park Avenue princess, but I think at the back of her mind, she always has this strange complex where she feels like she has to really fit in with the Park Avenue set, and she has to deny her Asian side. So of course, when she goes to Capri for the wedding of the year, one of her oldest friends has a crazy rich Asian wedding in Capri, which was actually inspired in many ways by my friend Fei Ping Chang's wedding. I don't know if you ever saw the pictures. I put some up on Instagram a couple of days ago. And my Instagram blew up because she had the most gorgeous wedding, at this villa in Capri. But yeah, so I wanted to put all the mix of the fun in there. The romance, the shopping, the sex, the sand, the sea, the food, the love triangle. You'll have to read all about it to find out what happens.
Exactly. Well, it's the perfect escape, and it's what we really need right now too. But I mean, and you write so much about the truth, real life things, like you said, your friend's wedding. You go to Capri all the time, and while you're sitting there, I'm sure you're a rubbernecker. You really are an observer, aren't you, Kevin? You write what you see, because your detail is insane with the characters, the settings, the way people dress, everything. It's incredible.
I really do. I always say I have no imagination. All I do is sit and observe. And Capri is the ultimate. It's like an island that's like theater. It's so beautiful. And you arrive at the port. For those of you who haven't been there, if those of you have, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but you arrive at the port, and it's kind of you're at a pretty island. It's kind of a messy. There's boats arriving. There's ferries. There's little tourist shops, but that's not Capri. You take the funicular up to the top, and there at the top of the rock is the most glamorous, beautiful, golden lit town you can imagine. The streets look like they're paved in gold. They're not. It's actually volcanic stone, but they glow beautifully. And then there's bougainvillea, on every vine. It's almost like Miami in a way. It's tropical. It's beautiful. Everything's whitewashed.
The lemon trees.
And then you have these beautiful little sandal shops, selling just the most rustic and yet beautiful, elegant little simple sandals, next to Christian Dior.
Right.
Next to Dolce & Gabbana. But they're special Dolce & Gabbanas. It's a Dolce & Gabbana that sells a Capri-only collection.
Wow.
It's Louis Vuitton that sells wicker baskets stamped with Louis Vuitton. So it's so special of an island. And the little piazza, there's like 5 different cafes around the square, and you sit out at a table and you just watch the world go by. It's the most amazing people watching. And so I did that for many, many years. I would sit there, have a drink with friends, with family, and I would see all these Lucys come my way, because every time you're there, there's a different, you meet the same people. If
They
you're
all
there
come back for the
for a few
summer.
days. Yeah,
Right.
they come back for the summer. Or if you're there for more than a few days, you see the same families over and over again because you're on a tiny, tiny island, right? It's
Right.
smaller than Star Island,
Yeah.
So really, I mean, so
Right.
you're there and you're seeing the same people. And the first day I'll be sitting in the square and I'll see a family arriving, beautiful American family. There'll be a girl who's like 16 years old and she's bored and she's just on her phone and doesn't want to talk to her parents. And then by day 2, she's found the other teenagers.
Right.
And
they're all bonded and friends.
They're all bonding in front. By day 3, she's got a boyfriend now, because she's met some hot young Italian guy and she's holding hands with him and they're wandering around the island because the kids won't run wild.
Right.
It's
they can do
so
whatever
safe.
they want.
They can do it. There's no crime. There really is
Nowhere
no
to
crime
go.
because nowhere to go. Right. And then by day 6, when they're leaving, she's crying at the dock, because she has to leave her new Romeo, So I kept seeing this over and over again. I was like, this is the perfect place to set this story of a girl coming of age, a girl who is really coming into her own, finding her own identity, finding her own sexuality. She's blossoming, before our eyes. And that's what I was trying to capture.
And you did perfectly, which is amazing because you feel it. I mean, you feel her so excited with all of her new clothes, and it's interesting when you mentioned the homage to Room with a View, because the same character names. You have Lucy, you have George, you have Charlotte, which we all love. I mean, how could you not love that? But you feel this passion within Lucy, and of course George, who is the other wonderful character. But also you feel the struggle because you're right. She is having that struggle of her roots, of her biracial background. And you bring that into a lot of your books. Is that something you see in some of your friends? Did you take inspiration from your own life? Where does that come from?
It's hard enough growing up and being a teenager these days, no matter what race you are. It's a universal problem being a teenager coming of age. But imagine the complication, I think of being Hapa. Hapa is the Hawaiian word for mixed race, especially in this day and age, in the culture we live in, to get all the mixed messages and to feel pulled and torn between two cultures. And that's just one experience. There can be many, this is the thing about being Hapa. There is no one universal experience. Everyone has a different experience based on how they were brought up, where they lived. Context is everything. Geography is everything. Because in a very strange way, I grew up in Singapore, my first 11 years of my life. And there, we called them Eurasians back in those days, and I had Eurasian cousins, I had, aunts and uncles who married Australians and British and Canadians, whatever, So I grew up in a very mixed race family in a way. And it was so interesting to see how different people had different experiences, completely different based on what their parents emphasized and what they valued. Put it this way. Whether they encouraged them to seek out their Asian roots or whether they were living in denial of their Asian roots, it was so interesting. And then, of course, that also happened when I moved to the US. I have so many friends now in New York, in LA, who are Hapa. And I really wanted to do them justice, And so I spent a lot of time talking, interviewing, really finding out their different stories. I had a friend who really she is a Park Avenue princess in a way. She grew up in Park Avenue. She actually went to Braley where Lucy did.
Wow.
And, and I asked her, I was like, did you have any problems, growing up as a Hapa? And she's like, oh, hell no. Like, no, I was popular. I was the cool half Asian kid. No problems whatsoever, And then you'd hear the completely opposite story from someone else, a boy that I know that went to school to like a very elite prep school in upstate New York, and he was bullied.
Amazing.
Bullied and bullied. He was treated like the Chinese nerd.
Right.
Even though he wasn't Chinese, he was only half Chinese. So it's such an interesting spectrum of experiences, and it's such an interesting place to be in America today. And I just felt it was my way of talking about things and really exploring something meaningful in a thoughtful way.
And what's interesting is everybody's drawn to that too. Everybody loves to hear that because you see the way Lucy and George are and how they handle things differently. And one of the things that I loved in this book too was when you introduce somebody like Lucy, it would be like kindergarten 92nd Street / Braley / brown. It was almost like, here's their pedigree right from the beginning. And I think you said before that you see that in New York, you know, at a cocktail reception, right away, people know where you went to school or graduated or who your mom and father was. And you experienced that.
People are name dropping their schools. You know, it's a very, very sort of waspy, you know, New York thing to do, but it's also a very Asian thing to do. You know, in Asia, you know, parents, they can't wait to brag about which Ivy League schools their kids are going to, or Cambridge, or whatever it is. You know, so it's that education snobbery that's, you know, exists within both of those worlds. That I thought was fun to make fun of in that way.
No,
so you know, yeah,
I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. And one of the other things that was very interesting, we were reading the book, and I know that a lot of the audience members will appreciate, is your little footnotes. You know, when you're writing something, and all of a sudden they're talking about, I think it was Rosemary, George's mother, who was wearing an Alexis Carrington. And, you know, she was like, oh my God, this was worn in the scene in Dynasty when Blake was choking Alexis. And then at the bottom of the page, you're totally like, my character is totally wrong. That wasn't the dress. You know, and it's so exciting. I'm sitting reading the book and laughing out loud, seriously, because you're telling your character, that's totally wrong. How did you decide to do that? I mean, that's so interesting and different.
You know, when I write, I'm like a man possessed. I really am. You know, in real life, I'm a very quiet, contemplative person, really. I don't say much. If you meet me at a party, you know, it'll be like squeezing blood out of stone to get me to talk, seriously. But there is this craziness. Seriously, there's a craziness that comes out when I write. And so I think I say, you know, as a writer, that's how that's where I'm comfortable most expressing myself. And there is this snarky side that wants to have fun. You know, I think there's like this part of me that wants to be like the class clown in a way, or, you know, or the court jester that like, I just think it's fun. It adds another layer to the books. Sometimes you learn something. Sometimes it's just a joke.
Right.
But it's just become a thing that, you know, I started with my first books, with the Crazy Rich Trilogy, and just built on that. And so I felt like, you know, I need to give readers what they want, and I love doing it. So you know, it makes me happy. You know, and if I made you laugh, that's the whole objective.
It was amazing. I'd be reading at like 4 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't put this one down, and I read the trilogy like that too. But it was you're right, you're biting wit. You know, you're talking about these phenomenal outfits and these exquisite, the way their hair is done or anything, and then there's a little like snide remark, but it wasn't hurtful. You know, it made you feel good about it. So, like you said, it's incredible how these characters almost took a life of their own, probably while you're sitting there writing them. Did you go ahead while you're writing this and plan out their whole life, or did it come chapter by chapter?
It really, really happens. I'm the most disorganized writer. I don't plan, I don't outline. I really just sit down with an idea of the chapter every single day. I write sequentially, you know, so I can't jump from the beginning to the middle, and, you know, I have to write chapter, because I literally don't know what's going to happen, you know. Especially with the trilogy, especially with Crazy Rich Asians and those books. You know, here at least I had guideposts. You know, I had, you know, this is a tribute to E.M. Forster's book, so I knew generally what's going to happen. Boy meets girl, girl hates boy, you know, girl stabs boy. You know, that doesn't actually happen. But you know what I mean? Like, I had these guideposts, but within them, I could really play and do crazy stuff. And really, I used to hear this from other writers back when I was in creative writing school, and I would go to writers' workshops, and writers would say, oh, you know, I just let the characters speak to me. And I'd be like, what bullshit? I mean, that's such crap. That's mumbo jumbo. It really happens. You know, I will really sit there. I will start writing a scene, and then the characters will really start speaking. You know, I'll be typing, and then Astrid will want to say something different than what I wanted her to say.
Interesting.
And they really do kind of come out of my mind and onto the page. And I just I've learned, I think my lesson here over the last 10 years of writing is like, I just learned to let go and really let the story and let the characters speak to me and do what they want. Because otherwise, I think if I was one of these really, you know, very organized OCD planners, it would really be a boring book. You know, it would be, you know, my books thrive in this weird, interesting chaos. where things happen that I don't ever expect. The whole scene with Mordecai and the boat trip to the villa.
I love it.
I don't even know where he came from, seriously.
Oh
because
my God.
in the books, in A Room of Review, there is a snobby preacher named the Reverend Eager.
Yes. And
He's
so
in
it's
the
kind
books,
of
he's
based,
in the movies.
right.
That was the inspiration. I was going to have a Reverend Eager, but instead of Reverend Eager, Baron Mordecai von Efrusi, sort of came out of nowhere and decided he wanted to be in the book.
Right.
It was like,
I love it.
it's like, I don't know, I'm like possessed and these little creatures come out, and he was this amazing snobby person that just took over that chapter and made it so fun to write. And once I start writing about them, I can't stop. No. That's how Kitty Pong happened. Kitty Pong was supposed to be such a minor character in the books. She was a throwaway character, wow. She was a side joke.
Right.
And she, not to give too many spoilers, becomes a very major part of the trilogy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I didn't decide it. It just happened, and there's something magical that happens, I think, in the creative process. Whether you're a writer or an artist or a musician or someone that likes to knit, strange things happen as you are in a creative process, I find.
And I love that you let it go, because like you said, others may say, I have to follow my notes, or this is the way it's supposed to go. But even with Kitty Pong, like you said, when I read the first book, you're right. She was just a little minor character, but we don't want to give it away, but incredible as it goes on, and building on her personality and her persona. It keeps you going. I mean, literally, I bought the third book right away I read it on my phone. And that's in the book too, because sometimes you can't go out and buy a book right away from Books and Books. So I order it on my phone from Books and Books right away, because you can't stop the story. And I'm sure that's the same way it is with you. Keep going and going and going. But it's funny. I read something that Crazy Rich Asians kind of came from something you wrote in college. Could this be true? The idea came from a poem?
It came from a poem. You want to hear the poem?
I would love to hear the poem.
Give me 1 second.
Love to hear the poem.
I'm just gonna go get it. Give me 1 second.
Go get it. Kevin's amazing. The more I read about him, I mean, I'm addicted. I can't believe that he's actually quiet at cocktail parties, guys, because the stories that are spilling out of his mouth. And when I read he was taking a creative writing class, and this was back in Texas, and he wrote a poem, and this was kind of the inspiration. So we're excited to hear this poem.
Yeah. So I'm back. You don't have to worry. So back. I originally went to school at University of Houston, and I studied journalism and creative writing, but I was really into writing experimental poetry. And so this is a poem that I write that got published. This was one of the first times I got published in a real thing in the Houston Poetry Fest anthology, 1995, right?
Wow.
Can I find this poem? 1 second.
I love it. From what I read, I heard your class and your professor went nuts over it too. So that is great.
Here we go. Singapore Bible study.
Very cool.
Her bedroom hides behind the courtyard, where old amas squat, fanning flames under cracked enamel boilers. I play under the rosewood altar, legs kicking the Coromandel screen. Auntie Sally sprawls on her bed, one hand on the New Testament, the other wrist deep in her jewelry chest. The ladies who pinch my cheeks spew verses from 1 Timothy, trade stock tips, and salivate over translucent jade, Burmese emeralds, Harry Winston crosses. Her bedroom feels empty without the gold-dipped Buddha, the Ming dragon vases smashed last week by Sister Rosie, the Pentecostal charismatic, who condemned them as satanic, while Auntie Sally's husband puffed his cigar, swirled his Hennessy, said nothing. Today he bursts in and proclaims, Sino land is going to crash. The ladies dive for their phones, screech at their brokers to sell, as Auntie Sally prays for mercy, for deliverance, eyes clamped shut, hands in midair. She begins to speak in tongues. Peeking out, I begin to mimic her. Sha-la-la, blue, blah, blah, blue, blah, la, la. Look, he's filled of the Spirit, the ladies squeal. Pull me from my hiding place. Manicured claws descend on my head.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So I haven't read that in like at least 10 years, when I first wrote Crazy Rich Asians. But it's amazing. Like so much of that scene is intact. The Bible study,
Eleanor. Yes.
Eleanor, they're trading stock tips, and then like they get a rumor and all the women are like rushing to call their brokers. And then it's also a mashup with another scene where talk about this sort of nun who's like smashing up all the antiques in the house. That really happened. Like I literally saw that with my own two eyes. Well, I saw the whole thing with my own two eyes, but like, my mom had this friend, who was this fabulously wealthy tycoon, and they had this beautiful mansion and the most precious, museum quality antiques. And I think they lost a ton of money in the stock market. And of course found Jesus because of that, and this sort of religious woman came in and told them, it's because of all these dragons and Buddhas and all these things, you need to get rid of them. So they literally were smashing up all these priceless antiques around the house.
What a scene.
And I was like 8 years old watching, in the distance, and my mom and her friends were like horrified because they were like, oh my God, it's like millions of dollars just destroyed in front of their eyes. And the servants had to like sweep it all up, and crazy times.
That made it into
a crazy book. Yeah,
but it makes for good movie, for a good book. That's incredible. And well, speaking of the movie too, of Crazy Rich Asians, what was it like for you to be an executive producer? I heard you were very involved in the detail of the settings and the fashion. I mean, really, from writing a book to being a producer of a movie. It's a huge jump, but you have the background really with Broadway and everything. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, in my previous life, I was a visual consultant, and I actually did work on set design on Broadway, on movies, on dance theater. So, like my previous career before I started writing books was in the design world. So when they asked me like, do you want to write your own script for the movie? I was like, no, please, no. Like, that's taking something that's so close to me, a novel, and a 500-page novel, and making it an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh God.
We need an expert. We need the experts to do that. The Hollywood amazing screenwriters. And we got Piacciarelli. He was amazing. He's done so many amazing movies like The Proposal with Sandra Bullock. So he was like such a pro at the rom-com genre, So I really let him focus on adapting the story into a screenplay. And I was like, here, how I can really help is visually. Like I can make sure it looks authentic, it looks real, it looks truly Crazy Rich. Because I want these people, like the ones I write poems about, to be able to look at this and take it seriously.
Right.
And for that crowd to go, oh yeah, that's it. I'd buy that dress, or I'd wear that jewel. So that was the fun part for me, to really like work with designers to like help curate the jewelry that all these people were wearing, to help find the houses where we would do the settings and inspire the set design, and the whole house, that mansion, where Nick takes Rachel to meet the grandmother.
Right.
It was an abandoned old hotel in Kuala Lumpur. When we got there, it was filled with monkeys and bats.
Oh my God.
And it was decrepit. And in 2 weeks, they transformed it. Like everything you see there, I should be saying this, is not real. They brought in, they sourced all the best antiques from all the stores around Asia. They created the wallpapers. They just made it Hollywood. Hollywood is amazing. Yeah, the tiger was made in Thailand.
Oh my God.
Because it's not a real tiger. You can't shoot tigers anymore and stuff.
Right.
So they had it made in Thailand. And it looked so real when they were trucking it across the border into Malaysia. It got stopped at customs, and they refused to believe it was a fake tiger. Like we had to produce all the paperwork to go like, look, he's fake.
This is not real.
This is not real. Yeah, and it's for a movie. So that was the fun part, and casting, of course. To really sort of look over all the audition tapes and find, Henry Golding.
Dream come true.
Need I say more? Yeah.
Right. The voice, the look. I mean, everything. Well, the good news is you're going to have to do this again, because we heard Sex and Vanity got picked up as well.
Absolutely. And Sony is so excited. They actually want to get into production right as soon as we can. Like as soon as we can sort of unlock and be safe be safely on a movie set together. You know, they really are so excited about this project, and it's going to be so fun to cast.
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
because it's going to be.
Who are your picks? Who are your picks?
Yeah.
I want to hear.
Can't say.
Don't want to get you in trouble. Well, the exciting
No,
thing too is because this is a different setting. This is not in Singapore and Hong Kong. I mean, you get to come to East Hampton and New York and shoot this, and this is your backyard right now.
Yeah.
And Capri. I mean, hello, there you go. There's your summer. Next summer, get to go to Capri. And why did you do that? Why did you leave Singapore and Hong Kong and decide to come to the States and Capri? Something different.
I mean, exactly. I wanted to do something different. I felt like I'd given 10 years of my life, 3 books, to writing about Asians in Asia, and it's like I didn't want to limit myself. You know, I wanted to spread my wings, to tell a different story, to introduce new characters. And I thought Lucy and George and Cecil, and they're compelling characters to want to set a book about. And I wanted to also, this is the Cities Trilogy. I wanted to pay tribute to these cities that I love, and New York was my home for 22 years. So
wow.
I wanted to really, this is my love letter to New York in a way. And the next book in the trilogy will be my love letter to London.
Ooh, can't
and
wait.
And then the last book is going to be Paris. So.
Oh my God. I can't wait. Oh, that's going to be amazing. And then we're going to talk about Miami, Kevin. We're going to talk about Miami.
Hey, it might pop up sooner than you think.
All right. Love them. We'll take you around. We'll start off at Books and Books and Dollar Shops. And there you go. Which would be amazing. Well, we know we want to get to some of our Q&As from our audience. But one of my last questions is, what subject are you eager to write about after you finish this next trilogy? Is there something you're eager to dive into that you haven't maybe touched yet or thought about yet?
Yeah, I actually, I plan way ahead. So I already know the trilogy after this trilogy.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I know what I'm going to write about, and it's brewing in my mind, and it's going to be even more epic than Crazy Rich Asians, I think.
Wow.
The Cities Trilogy to me is like a breath of fresh air. They're going to be these fun, snappy, international jet set books, and then I'm going to go deep into like one place.
Okay.
And one new family.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But still always with an Asian background, something.
We'll see. Like I don't want to be pigeonholed, but at the same time, like I feel like I have an opportunity to tell stories that really showcase diversity, that really talk about different cultures, and that really showcase the Asian culture. I write about what I know. So I'm never going to write about Russian billionaires. That's not going to happen. I don't. I don't know that world.
Down here.
I wouldn't be able to. So it won't stray too far from what I know, but we'll see.
And let me ask you one other question. How do you feel that social media has affected, from the beginning of your books to the last one where Cecil couldn't get off posting everything he was wearing and doing? How do you think that's changed since you wrote the first book till now?
I mean, it's amazing. It's changed by leaps and bounds every single year. Like if you remember in Crazy Rich Asians, there was a phone incident. Like Astrid saw something on a phone.
Right.
If I had to write the book over today, like would she discover some weird TikTok video?
Right.
Or would she? Because back then it was just a text message. That set the whole ball in motion.
Radio on Asia. Yeah.
There's now so much more we can do, because social media, especially at this time, it's taken over our lives, Stephanie. I mean,
it has. It has.
I'm trying not to let it,
right?
Because I'm all about the book, but it's hard. But I love Instagram. Just being a visual guy, being a photographer. That's where I spend the most time communicating with readers and things like that, and just sharing pictures. I've been posting a lot of pictures from Capri lately, the actual places that I write about in the book, and I'm going to keep doing that this weekend with more posts like that, because I think it's fun. If we can't travel there right now, let's just look at pictures and just pretend we're there. And
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And it really relates to people once they read the book and they're like, oh my God, that's what he's talking about.
It's a real place. Yeah.
It brings it home. It brings it home. Well, I
Yeah.
think we want to take some questions from our audience here. Let's see. How are we going to do this? All right. So Sarah, it says, hi, Kevin. How did your family and friends first react when you wrote about Singapore? You growing up in Singapore.
So my friends, I think, well, first of all, everyone was shocked because no one knew I was writing a book, you know. I really kind of just wasn't, I never told anyone. I just was just doing this. It was like a hobby. I wrote it over a 2.5 to 3 year period. And I really didn't talk about it at all. I didn't want to jinx it because it was becoming something very special to me. And so one day I finally just told, you know, my family, and then I told my friends, I was like, oh, I wrote a novel. It actually is going to get published next year,
Wow.
you know, and you know, because I'd done other books, you know, like I was Cuba, like presenting Cia the Cruise. My mom was like, oh, okay, another book. I just hope you can pay your rent, Kevin. You know, she's like, another sad little book that you give your life to, but you still don't have health insurance, you know, like, you know how moms are, right? So they were like, whatever. And my friends were, of course, so supportive, but it really shocked them when the book I wrote came out, and it was called Crazy Rich Asians. Wow. And it was about this world. And because so many of my friends never knew anything about this side of my life, about where I grew up. Right. So it was really, you know, because I didn't really talk about it much, and I didn't even remember it all that much until I started writing the books. So, and it's so different from anything I've ever done. You know, I used to exist in this world of like high literature or coffee table books, you know, right. About Cuba, about, you know, like design books, you know. I didn't write commercial fiction. Like, it was so strange to them that I would do such a thing. But, you know, by and large, I think most of my friends have loved it. My family, it's a mixture. You know, my mom loves my books because she gets it. You know, she recognizes the people. She knows who I'm writing about. She recognizes herself sometimes, you know. So my immediate family, you know, they read it and they laugh because they know where it comes from. They recognize scenes. They recognize my voice in it. Right. But I think for a lot of my relatives back in Singapore, they're just baffled.
Interesting. Do they think you got it on the nail? Do they think that you nailed it? I mean, like, you really, are they?
I feel like it's interesting. When you're in the bubble, it's hard to look at yourself and realize there's anything interesting about it, you know? Like, I had a relative that was trying to read the book, and she, you know, because my mom was like bothering her and saying, you know, have you read it? And she said, I tried to read it. It was so boring. And I don't understand, like, what is so interesting about these books? Like, and I realized it's because she is from that world, right? So it's not exotic to her. You know, she wants to read Danielle Steele. Right. You know, she wants to read about Russian princes, you know, or like a tech millionaire in the Bay Area. Singaporeans with money, like, who cares about that? You know, and she's like, who's he writing about? Who are these people he's writing about that have so much money? You know, and she said to my mom, sitting in her $50 million house, you know, she's telling my mom this. And like, literally, so it's like, I think when you're in the bubble, you just don't see it.
Right. It's everyday life. It's everyday
life. It's everyday life. They don't see it as exotic. They don't see it as interesting, and they don't believe it.
Wow.
That's the other thing, you know. So it's interesting. But like a lot of my family, the ones that immigrated, that left Singapore, but remember that world, you know, like cousins in Australia, cousins in Canada and places, they read it and they laugh and they laugh and they laugh.
That is great. Well, we all did too.
Yeah, because they get it. They left the bubble.
Right.
And they can look back like I did and see it for what it was.
I love it. I love that.
Sorry, that's a very long answer. Yeah.
No, it's great. But does anybody ever say, hey, you wrote about my wedding, or hey, that was something I did? Does anybody ever recognize?
Well, I always really take care to change things to a degree to where they're never actually, you can't link it to an actual incident or an actual news story. Like, I'm very protective of my friends and my family and the people I write about. I'm not out to grind any axes. Right. I'm not out to spill secrets or expose scandals. Like, this is all public information. But I'm retelling it and sort of blending the information in a way that keeps people safe. So, so far, so good, you know?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, we have Maya asking where your fave place in the world is.
I mean, I hate to sound like a, you know, like a record player that's kind of on repeat, but Capri is kind of like my favorite island, favorite place in the world. It's just paradise. Wish I could be there now.
Fantasyland.
Yeah.
We have Allison asking if you could talk a little bit about how you write, what your creative process is, and how you get motivated when you get stuck.
So, you know, I think so much of being a quote unquote professional writer is that you have to show up. Just like being a professional athlete, just like anything you do, you just have to put in the time, whether or not you're in the mood, whether or not you're inspired. And I think it just really comes from building a practice and a regimen. So when I write my books, I know I'm on deadline, right? I know I have until this date to turn in these chapters. And I've, until now, never missed a deadline. Like I'm still like a good schoolboy.
Thank God.
At the end of the day, yeah. So I really, you know, like I spend 8 hours a day writing.
Wow.
You know, I start in the mornings. Yeah, I wake up at, you know, I sit at the table by 8 p.m. By 8 a.m. I'm at the table and I write till 1. And then I take a break for lunch. And that's the first time I'll turn on my email and turn on my phone, check my messages, you know, do all the housekeeping that I need to do. Right. And then I'll take a break to do all that. And then at 4 o'clock, I'll go back to writing and I'll write till 8 again, you know? So it really has to become like a military operation. Otherwise, I'm not going to meet my deadlines, right? You know? And there are days where nothing happens. I will be writing, I'll be hating everything, I'll be throwing it away the next day, but it's just, you know, you keep doing it and you get to good places when you do it. That's just, you know, it's so unglamorous and so unromantic, but that's just my practice, at least, you know.
But that's interesting. That's interesting because you don't hear some writers, you know, it's like, oh, I'll write today, I'll write tomorrow. I mean, yours is like, you want to say a 9-to-5 job. You're actually, it's a desk job.
It's a job. It's a desk job, you know, and people don't realize like how many hours you have to put in to make a book happen, you know. But
well, you did a spectacular job on this one. So the next question is interesting. I know she's one of your friends. Cornelia Guest called you an urban romantic. They want to know, Caroline wants to know if you agree, and also why do you think the lives of the rich and glamorous make the perfect backdrops for your love stories?
I didn't know Cornelia said that. That was really, really kind of sweet and kind of beautiful. Urban romantic. Hey, I'll take that. That's lovely.
It is.
You know, I just write books that I want to read. And for me, I actually read a ton of nonfiction. So I always alternate. I'll read a nonfiction book, like, you know, for example, the Edward Snowden biography, you know, his memoir. I'll read that, and then I'll read a work of fiction. That's what kind of what I do. So when I read nonfiction, I read current affairs, politics, issues. It's pretty depressing stuff, you know, or it's really serious stuff. I read books on finance. You know, I read books about pandemics. Believe it or not, way before our current pandemic, I had this obsession with Ebola. You know, I was reading books about Ebola and hemorrhagic viruses and, you know, stuff that's just, you know, not that pretty. No. So when I read novels, I want to get lost in a world. Unfortunately, I don't like reading depressing novels. Some people love that.
I know.
Some people love to read about, you know, people on the edge, people who are in desperate lives, desperate situations. And some of the best books in the world are about that. I can appreciate that and its place in literary history and the genre. For me, I want to escape. I want to eat great food. I want to read about great food. I want to read about exotic places. And so that's why I set the books the way I do. And I think there is this tradition that I'm part of. You know, Dominic Dunn wrote these beautiful books, you know, about the privileged and the murder and the intrigue and the scandals in that world, you know. But you go back to Truman Capote. He did that too, you know, less successfully. He told too many real secrets.
Yes.
And got ostracized, you know, from that crowd. But, you know, and interestingly enough, you know, CZ Guest was one of his swans that he didn't ostracize because he only said good things about her. And CZ, as we know, is Cornelia's mom.
Right, of course.
But then, you know, you go back to Edith Wharton, to Henry James. There has always been this tradition, and those were always the books I loved to read. You know, Pride and Prejudice. It would be a very different book if Elizabeth Bennet was like living in a hovel and falling in love with a laborer. You know what I mean? No, she fell in love with the Duke, you know, and went to live in a palace. And so, you know, call me shallow. These are the books I write. I want to laugh. I want to have joy, and I want to bring people joy.
And you do, and you entertain us, and you keep us, like I said, I'm smiling the entire time I'm reading this book. I'm smiling, I'm laughing, and I think now more than ever, everybody needs that. You know, we need to feel good. You know, we need that escape, like we spoke about. And a lot of it has to do with the settings, also, and your characters. And the next question is, since Bell Harbor Shops is the best shopping mall in the world and a true icon in the fashion industry, who is your fashion icon, Kevin?
Who is my fashion icon? If I had to pick one person, I would have to say Yves Saint Laurent.
Ah, yes.
You know, because not only was he so brilliant, he changed the face of women's fashion. You know, he liberated women and allowed them to feel sexy and dangerous and amazing and wear cool blazers and pantsuits. And like, he was such an innovator for his time. Number one. But he personally also had amazing style as a guy, you know, and I wish I was as thin as he was.
So
I wish I could actually dress like him, you know, and wear these cool, you know, very Parisian, cool dude. You know, I don't smoke, but you know, there's that illusion of like, he had this 70s disco cool vibe that I just think, you know, he was just so ahead of his time. You know, you see how his style today influences so many people, so many designers, you know, from Tom Ford to, you know, Valentino to, you know, it's young designers, Alexander Wang, people like that. It's, you know, it all comes back to Saint Laurent.
No,
so thank you for the question. Yeah.
A true icon. And in the same field here, another fashion style question. It says, Elias says, do you let designers know they will be mentioned in your books? And do you ever get thank you notes from the designers you have mentioned?
I don't, and I haven't actually.
Interesting.
It's, you know, I think fashion is in such a different realm. And the people who are in the fashion business, I don't mean this to sound negative, but they're in their own world, and they also feel like they are at the top of the pyramid, and everyone else is below them. So seriously, so like, they don't care. They really don't care that they've been mentioned in my books I feel most of the time. Now, there are individual like artisanal designers that I showcase also. I love to showcase new talent in my books. So there's, for example, this amazing handbag designer that does beautiful evening purses from the Philippines. Neil Phillip is his name.
Okay.
Amazing stuff. Like, he has this amazing bag with a dragon on it, which he calls the Susie Wong bag. You know,
I love it.
So I featured his work because I loved it in my books, and he's so grateful. You know, there are jewelers. You know, jewelers are much more bespoke because it's a much more smaller business. So there's an amazing jeweler from Hong Kong named Michelle Wong who became a friend of mine because I first showcased her work in my books. You know, Astrid wears a beautiful pair of earrings designed by her. But no, I don't tell them, and I don't ever, you know, like, I don't expect anything in return. I just like to showcase talent and spotlight amazing talent when I see it. And have I ever been given anything for free? No. Has anyone dressed for the red carpet for free? No. You know, writers get treated very differently than actors. You know, I remember, like, I was talking once to, you know, I was at a premiere with Awkwafina, and she's like, "Oh my God, I love your jacket. Like, when do you have to return it?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, I don't get to like borrow clothes from fabulous designers like you do. Like, I have to buy my own stuff, you know.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Well, you mentioned Awkwafina, and we want to give away today, actually, a signed copy of first edition of Sex and Vanity. So we're going to do a little trivia question. So pick a number between 1 and 5, Kevin.
3.
Okay. So the third person that is going to comment right now is going to get, if they answer the question, who was Rachel Chu's best friend in Crazy Rich Asians? What's the character's name? And as you mentioned, her character was brilliantly portrayed by Aquafina, and you can't answer it, Kevin. So the third person, let's see who that is. Can we see here? Oops, let's see if the questions are coming up. And this is exciting because this is the hardback signed first edition right here. I got one from Books and Books in Bal Harbour. Right there, if you can see, it's signed by Kevin.
Those are rarer than gold. Even my mom doesn't have a signed book. Because you know what happened? You know, when the pandemic first began and we all went into lockdown, they were like, oh my God, we can't tour anymore. You know, they had planned this whole tour. They're like, how's he going to sign books? So they sent me 10,000 sheets of paper.
Oh my God.
Which it took me a month and a half to sign. And now I have like seriously like chronic shoulder issues. Signing 10,000 sheets of paper. But then they took those sheets and they bound them into the books as they were being printed.
Oh
and
my
then
God.
I don't know, but you know, special bookstores got them all over the world, right? So Books and Books got some, you know, this bookstore I know in Switzerland got some, but they got all parceled out, a few copies around the world to like bookstores. So like, I would like a signed book so that I can send to someone.
I'll give you mine. Well, this one, you're right. It's Go Pay Clean. Lynn, Go Pay Lynn. Yes, and that goes to Katie. Katie, right there. You are number 3, and we have your name, and I have your little insignia right here too. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Katie.
Yay! That's incredible. This has been so much fun, Kevin. I have to tell you, I am so thrilled to have you on here for the Steph Says Book Club. We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for Sex and Vanity. I actually read it on PDF before I got the book. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
I wanted to read it that bad, Kevin.
You cheated.
I cheated.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think I read it in a day. I mean, my husband kept, go to bed. And it was 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, I did it. So
well, it makes me so happy you enjoyed it. Really, I mean, this is why I do what I do. I'm just trying to provide entertainment, and I'm so grateful you guys are all here. Thank you so much for attending this event on a Friday night when you could be doing so much more. Really, really appreciate it, and hope we get to meet up in person at Bal Harbour.
Yes, you got to come to Bal Harbour. We'll have a party for you. We'll do a big book signing, especially for the next book.
I don't even need that. I just want to come shopping. That's all, you know.
I'm going to take you around myself, Kevin. Don't worry.
I want to thank you both so much. It was such a phenomenal conversation. So many great, like so much insight. And all I can say is, Kevin, long live the craziness. Okay? Just let it go. Because back home, oh my God. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope we're all going to see each other in real life very soon in Miami. And until then, stay safe, be well, and keep writing and reading.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye. Thank you.
Bal Harbour Shops.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too. Take care. Bye, guys.